Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good night, good evening, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining. Just going to give people a few more seconds to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, so let's get started. Hi there, everyone. My name is Jeroen. I'm a copywriter at Pointerpro, so I'm part of the marketing team here. So this is Pointerpro Academy webinar number 4 this year. What I do at Pointerpro is I do much of the writing online and much of the online communication that you see from us. And so I was asked to share some of my knowledge with you today. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about writing very specifically. Because I believe writing and writing well is actually one of the most beneficial things that you can do for yourself and for your business. Because one, it helps you to see your thoughts in front of your own eyes and therefore clarify your thinking. And that means that when you write about your business, you'll actually understand your business and everything around it better. So complex thinking is what sets us apart from animals, but it's just thinking and it's just thoughts, and thoughts, they come and they go away. Writing is what makes things stick, actually. And that's actually what I try to do at Pointerpro as well. So I write about our product, about topics that are important to our users. And then hopefully I contribute to making important thoughts stick. And in this webinar, I want to help people who sometimes need to write for their business as well, reap more benefits from their writing. And the way to do so is write like a human, especially with the emergence of AI. So this webinar is not about telling you what is bad writing or what is good writing, in my opinion. First of all, it doesn't matter. And there are too many aspects that I would have to discuss. It'll be about how to keep your writing and your communication in this digital world human. I will happily take questions at the end of the webinar. So that would be the best time to drop those in the chat. So let's move on. First of all, let's maybe take one step back. Why do you actually need to communicate digitally? Well, this is kind of what you're seeing on screen here. Millennials and especially Generation Z are becoming more and more representative in the workforce and in the decision-making workforce. These are people that have grown up with or are actually born with consuming information and communicating digitally. So your digital presence is really crucial. So there's really no way around it. And there are numerous ways to be digitally present that require writing. You might have a website with a homepage with different landing pages where you talk about services or products that you have, blog articles that are used to delve into maybe important ideas related to your services or your expertise, online videos, even events, webinars like this one, or podcasts. A lot of scripting and writing is involved as well. Social media posts, of course, I mean, there's plenty of those, emails, etc., etc. But you're probably not a full-time writer like I am. Most likely, you're just trying to run a business. And so when you do need to write something, chances are that you'll end up with the following: a blank page syndrome, when you, for example, have to write a landing page. But the good news is there's AI, right? Exactly. But let's see, because for the sake of pointing out some pitfalls, I've done a very simple experiment. For those of you who are here who don't know what Pointerpro does, just very simply put, Pointerpro is a platform on which you can build online assessments or questionnaires, and they get you to automatically generate PDF feedback reports for your customers or users. So for instance, we have many clients in the HR industry, and they build different types of self-assessments for their employee development or recruitment. And so what I'll show is what would happen if I relied entirely on AI to write a website landing page introduction for this, without being critical about it and without iterating with ChatGPT. This is what you would get. You might have to get a bit closer to your screen here. I might as well, so excuse me for flinching. So the first thing that you might notice, and what makes this very unhuman-like, is simply the fact that it's very long. I asked for an introduction, a short introduction. That's not what this is. But on top of that, what I see also is quite a few elements that are meaningless, that actually lack meaning. So if you can imagine an unlimited amount of possible meanings when you're reading something, then that probably means there is no meaning. There's actually only distraction. So, I mean, have a look at these titles. Your ultimate assessment platform, unlock the power. With Pointerpro, the magic doesn't stop. Elevate your assessment game with Pointerpro. Like, what game are we talking about here? Are we inventing some kind of sport because the Olympics are coming up? I don't know. This is just, it's all exaggeration, and it just gives you a sense of being maybe lied to, or at least you're not getting the full truth. The second thing, it's more like something that lacks here. A lack of elements that are personal. And in this case, there's actually something that makes this message explicitly impersonal. So if you have a look at this first paragraph, it says, and now I'm going to have to flinch, whether you're an educator, HR professional, or business leader. So this text talks about the tool and anyone who could use it, So you'll never feel that this is meant specifically for you. This is not to say that you can't point out on your website page who your product is from and that it's for different audiences, but why do it in this first paragraph? So that feels impersonal. Thirdly, what I would like to point out is that there's a lack of story. So there's actually a reason that journalists say, what's the story, when someone is trying to get them to publish something. Stories are what get human beings to care about information. And the sentence that I marked in blue here it's actually entirely correct about our product. It doesn't say anything that's not true. It's purely factual. It doesn't allow the reader to imagine a situation where our product, Pointerpro, would make his or her life better, or the life of their customers. And so there's no story attached to it. And simply this entire text, it's not how a human being would communicate to another human being. And the result of publishing too much AI content and all too casually is that you'll have a lot of content, but you will create sort of human-shaped holes, big ones and small ones, and it will have people disconnect from you. And people buy from people because human-to-human connection is what creates trust. So the question becomes how to fill up those human-shaped holes, right? I don't suspect any of you simply copy-pasting the type of text that I showed. But yeah, how do you actually fill up these human-shaped holes if you do use ChatGPT, for instance, to create a text? That's what we're going to have a look at now. So without making things too complicated, I would say just simply start here. Inject meaning, personalization, and storytelling. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the ABCs for each of them, quite literally, and hopefully that'll make things a little more concrete. So first of all, the ABCs to writing meaningfully. So the first one is appeal to emotion and primal instincts. So emotion is the one thing that we're relatively sure of that AI can't generate at the moment. So using raw emotion in the right context, I'm really all for it. Primal instincts, I mean, those are ingrained in our human DNA. So these are things like survival instinct, connection, hunger and thirst, parental instinct, curiosity. Status is a very big one, very important one. Curiosity, safety is also one, identity. So all these primal things that you should try to appeal to. Be truthful. What I mean is use truth as a guiding principle. It will make your messaging over time more consistent, as opposed to when you're always exaggerating and using half truths that you wouldn't actually feel comfortable saying in real life either. At some point, people are going to want proof for any promise that you make explicitly, but also implicitly. So maybe one way to be truthful is to be as precise as you can in what you communicate about your service or your product. Then the third one, create a direction. So people want to know where they're going. Actually, in French, sens or sens, it means both direction and meaning. So generally, the direction that people want you to show them is how to get away from a bad situation, a problem, or hell, if you will, towards a better situation, or heaven, let's say. So really try to do that as well. That brings us to the next part, which is about writing personally. again, 3 ABCs here. The first one is very straightforward. Just ask questions. It will make people feel that what they're reading is about them and that they're having an interaction with you. Even though they can't actually answer you, it might work. It may even feed their desire to actually communicate with you, even if they can't at the moment that they're reading. So that's always a good one. The second one is be funny, or at least informal. Why? Because it relieves tension. And bear in mind that you'll often be talking about problems that your audience is dealing with. So if you can relieve that tension, that's actually going to be appreciated. And also it's gonna make things feel more, or it's gonna make things more memorable. So that's all good for you. Thirdly, centralize the reader. Use the words you and your a lot, and not just when you're asking questions. It's basically about encouraging people to give feedback, including them. So I'd love to know what you think. Could be like a little good phrase in there to just make people feel connected to what you're telling. And then maybe another thing to say about this is that try to, of course, speak the language of your audience. So don't use jargon. If you're a technology consultant, for instance, yeah, you should steer away from jargon all the time. And then the third one, storytelling. Yeah, this is going to be a little harder to explain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the bottom and I'll work my way up from C to A. So the first thing actually is, I would say, create a narrative pattern. What does that mean? I mean, just a clear beginning, middle, and an end, or some sort of a chronological pattern at least. So maybe if you can't do beginning, middle, and end, just give something that feels chronological. When there was actually no writing at all before human beings could write, storylines were actually the only way that our forefathers could structure and transmit information. And that's where archetypes come from. That's why stories about heroes are always very similar. And a very good resource about that, about the hero journey, by the way, would be Joseph Campbell, that many of you might have heard about. So yeah, just on the side there. The next one, be descriptive. Describe the surroundings and the people in the surroundings when you do storytelling. This is why stories are the most intuitive way for people to learn and understand concepts. Our forefathers, they would look at what other people did to learn about the world. This is actually why we have the white in our eyes, so that we could see where other peoples are looking. So we're really like social. We look at other peoples to understand the world around us, and that's still ingrained in our DNA, the empathy with other human beings. And lastly, allow for imagination. So you've created maybe that narrative pattern, but let the reader in on the story, so that your story becomes their story. So you could lay out a clear beginning of a narrative structure, and then sort of invite the reader to sort of imagine the rest, and they'll actually start seeing themselves as the hero of the story that you're telling, and that's very powerful. Okay, so I hope that makes things already a little bit more concrete. What I'm going to do now is try to make it even more concrete, and that's by showing some examples. And I'm going to use the customers, or like a typical customer's journey for this. In a very simplified way, this is typically what the customer journey boils down to before they're actually converting or being converted into clients or customers. They become aware of your existence because you're active online, for instance, on LinkedIn, and then they hopefully end up on your website to find out more about you. And then actually they might start interacting with you, for instance, via forms or questionnaires. Now, of course, email is also part of that interaction. As I was preparing this presentation, I realized two things. First, that email is actually a bit too specific. There are a lot of things to say about email writing, and it's really supposed to be truly one-on-one, which doesn't mean that you can't use AI to do email campaigns or to structure your campaigns, but I'm really specifically talking about writing here. So yeah, I didn't want to encourage AI for writing email that much here. So yeah, instead what I'll do is I'll touch on what Pointerpro clients are familiar with, which is creating interaction through assessments and personalized reports that are generated thanks to Pointerpro. So first example here, it's a LinkedIn example. Again, you can see that this is a lot of text. That's a first sort of giveaway that it might be AI. It doesn't necessarily mean this, but it's a giveaway. And the first thing is, well, again, exaggeration, kind of generic text. Yeah, I also noticed that a lot of titles with ChatGPT are all caps. I know I think in the USA, all caps is normal in titles, but that's not the case in all countries and not all English-speaking countries. So when you see a title that has all caps, often it's AI generated, but it's really about those, again, those exaggerations, those really strong words that you can see here as well. You know, harness the power, embrace data decision making, transform your leadership. It's all very I would say bombastic and not very necessarily very truthful. Another thing, okay, so one thing that's actually worse than having no story is saying you have a story, but then not really having one actually. So here it talks about getting started on a journey, and then it simply lists 3 tools without illustrating how it's impacting anyone's life. And that just feels, there's no storytelling there. That feels unhuman. And personalization, there is no personalization in this message as far as I'm concerned. And actually there's something that feels impersonal, and that's this call to action here. How do I put it? I mean, a call to action is something that you should put at the end of your texts to invite your reader to do something, to pass to the next step, to get maybe in contact with you. But if you literally are going to write call to action, well, it doesn't make you feel like you're being personally approached, does it? You kind of feel like an object if you read this, and I'm quite sure that this is purely AI generated, and that's why call to action is written there. So another giveaway here. So the second one is another LinkedIn example. Well, again, with the titles that exaggerate. What happens again when people exaggerate is that people are going to start feeling like they might be lied to or not being told the whole truth, and then they'll sort of disconnect, or they could disconnect even after just reading your title. So that's very important. Another thing worse than having no story is conveying a story, but that's actually no story. And here there's a pretty long piece of text, and I'm going to flinch a bit here again. So these days, leaders face an unprecedented challenge, managing the relentless deluge of information. This isn't just about email reports or news updates. It's about filtering the tidal wave of data to protect, and so on and so on. There's a lot of information here, and there's no, it's not put into a story. It's not conveying anything about how it impacts anyone's life. So that's a no for me as well. And then lastly, well, again, personalization, I put a question mark there. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's just no question mark at all in this piece of text. So imagine in real life when you're in a conversation and when someone talks this much to you and they don't ever check in with you for like a reaction or anything. How does that make you feel? It's impersonal. It's just you're not gonna feel connected. So let's move on to a better example. This is actually a good one. As you can see, first of all, it's way shorter. I mean, it just immediately lays out a story. It simply tells the story of a customer, it lays it out. It says, here is the dilemma of one of my clients. 1, 2, 3. 3 things that happened to this person's client. So you're immediately in some sort of a story. Then there's actually also some meaning in there. It's very subtle, but what you can see here is that this actually appeals to identity and status, literally mentioning it in this case. And believe it or not, but that's something that triggers people on a subconscious level, and it will make them curious to read further. And then personalization, asking questions, and obviously it's probably not a surprise that I'm a fan of questionnaires being a part of Pointerpro, but I really like the LinkedIn polls because it asks a question, it involves the reader, it asks simply, what would you do? So moving on to sort of the next phase. So this is a website page. Actually, unfortunately, the first thing that we see here and that grabs the most attention is the title. It's very big, and it actually says very little. It's too imprecise, and there's a little bit of exaggeration going on. So that kind of feels impersonal, but it gets better. The follow-up is actually better. Because it starts like centralizing the reader. There's a lot of use in there, and then actually as you scroll down on this page, it gets better even. So there are various good elements here. The first sentence, it uses the concept of leadership and loneliness, which is like the lack of social connection, and they both appeal to, those are two primal instincts, right? So that's actually quite good. And then it follows up again, it confirms that we're talking about you and your situation. And again, there's very little text here. And then next, quite interestingly, here's actually some sort of a storyline that you can see. So it's like a chronological structure from being overworked to feeling overwhelmed, impacting your situation at home even, where you're feeling overstressed. So that's actually pretty good. And again, not a lot of text here. That today, not a lot of text, it conveys a lot of humanity. So that's very good. Not so much here. This is a landing page of a website of a company that offers professional coaching. So this title is kind of a mess. I don't think it needs a lot of explanations, all of the things that I discussed. Then there's a very good intention of centralizing the reader and asking questions, but there's just too much of them. Who asks this many questions? It's not really going anywhere, and not really going anywhere for me. That's like, there's no story, like it's just random questions. So that's really sort of a kind of a bad example, I would say. Just in juxtaposition to this example, we have this one. This is a website homepage that uses very little text. Again, very little text is really more and more a signifier of something that's human written. So conciseness is very important. Like basically what they're doing here is with one simple sentence, they're asking you a question. And the effect is it's stronger than you think, because as a reader, you feel like instead of all the things that they could have put on their website homepage, this is a homepage, all of the things that they could have said about their product or service, in this case, it's another consulting service, they didn't put it there. They dedicated their whole homepage to you and one question that concerns you. So it's all about you. So this is very strong in terms of personalization. One but last website example. This is the website of a consultancy that offers team coaching. And this is really all in on storytelling. This is actually called scrollytelling. It basically invites you to scroll through a story. The arrow gives it away that there's something to discover. So what you do is you scroll down, and then it follows up with "and yet," and then you see here that it's kind of a different approach to centralizing the reader. It's not using the word "you," but it's including you. So instead of calling out you, it includes you as the reader, as one of us. So that's actually also a good way to personalize. And then interestingly, it uses truth as a guiding principle as well, because these little labels here, they cite different sort of embarrassing but understandable reasons why we're not always honest. And again, she or he includes herself here, the writer, and that creates some vulnerability as well, that creates human connection. So that's actually very meaningful. And eventually this leads to their service. If you scroll down, it leads to what their service offerings really are, as you might expect. So the downside is, okay, you do have to scroll down a little bit, but the readers that do get to the end, they're really engaged. And that's, in the end, that's what you want. So, let's be honest, I think all of us love scrolling every once in a while, don't we? And so almost there. This is the very last website that I'll show, followed by an assessment, because this is actually a Pointerpro client. This is a consultancy that helps leaders and entrepreneurs see things more clearly and be more confident. And they do this really well. So have a look at this. It's very clean again. It's a clean, simple homepage. It's dedicated to you with a positive call to action about what you should do. Build your confidence and clarity, and then it starts with, it invites you to start by taking an assessment, and actually that little word "start," it's sort of a meaningful element, because again, remember I talked about a sense of direction to be meaningful. Well, this is where you start. So yeah, that's actually quite nice. And then here I have a few screenshots that I took of the beautiful assessment that they made with a lot of personalized elements. The first name is being asked at the beginning of the questionnaire. The rest of the contact information that this company needs is actually asked at the end, which is very well done, because that way it's just about you during the assessment, and everything else happens afterwards. And of course, by asking the first name, you can address the person by their first name in the report, which is what they do. So these are just a few screenshots of the report. So for those who are, for those who are not familiar with Pointerpro, so this is an automatically generated personalized report. So that means that everyone who fills out the assessment gets this report, and it's really personalized. It's automatically generated again, and it goes into many things, stats about the responses, tips, advice. So yeah, it's clearly all about the reader. So it makes the experience very personalized once again. So I think they did a really good job there. So the question is, what now? So I hope you kind of enjoyed those examples, and that they've make things, and especially that they've made my ABC frameworks make a little bit more sense. So maybe just to finish up and make it a bit more practical as well, I would like to leave you with 4 takeaways or tips. Once again, to be clear, the message of this webinar is not to stop using AI to create your content. Very often, you just need to get started. It's no coincidence that there's a common saying around copywriters that says writing is rewriting. So if it helps you get started, that's fine. Whatever you write, whether it be yourself or ChatGPT, you're always going to have to rewrite anyway. So it's fine to get started. And again, for creating structures for a blog post or an email campaign, it's perfectly fine. So definitely takeaway number 1, use ChatGPT to craft and iterate, and stop seeing it as a digital writer. And I'm not just saying that because I'm afraid of losing my job as a copywriter. So second tip here, so if you do want to write a lot of content and then publish it, website pages, blog articles, social media posts, online advertising maybe, here's a key tip that I have for you to give you some sort of bearing. So what you do is you define key activating messages that you can honestly tie your product or your service into. And for everything that you ever publish, double check if you can categorize it under one of these key messages. What you're seeing here is the key messages, or actually promises, that we know that Pointerpro can deliver on. And the very subject of this webinar is one of them. As you've seen, our assessment and report builders that can help you personalize your digital approach. You can see that we kind of help you humanize a digital service. Yeah, that's just what the 21st century is all about. So that brings us to the third one. The way that 2 human beings connect in real life is that you need to talk about what's actually on your mind and actually in your head. So otherwise you don't really connect. And if you want to connect with your audience online, especially if you're in a people-based service business, it's really the same. AI only delivers collective knowledge, and it tends to ramble on about it. So What I'd say is use your specialized knowledge and personal experience as a starting point, then leverage it with AI or other tools like Pointerpro and many other tools. And finally, if you kind of liked what I told you in this webinar, like really keep these pointers in mind to fill up any human-shaped holes that you come across when you're generating AI content. All right, so that's it for actually the whole explanation. I think we still have some time for Q&A. So I'm going to look at the chat in a minute. Feel free to drop your questions. I just want to mention that we'll also upload this recording to our YouTube channel in case you would like to, revisit it or even maybe send it to other people. I would really appreciate that. Definitely check out the other videos on our YouTube channel as well. And also stay tuned for our next webinar next week. My colleague Matt will show you how to grow your consultancy if you're a consultant without increasing your payroll. And the way to do it is thanks to maturity assessments. It's quite exciting. So I'll let Matt fill in the blanks there next week. So yeah, and if I can get your question somehow, we'll make sure that you get a response afterwards. So let me have a look here at the chat. I see some notifications. Okay, someone asks, what if I'm not a good writer and make a lot of mistakes? Should I avoid writing on certain channels? It's a good question. I mean, I guess one of my points in this webinar was definitely to encourage you to write. So no matter what your writing skills are, do it, because I think we're entering in an era where it's important to show that you're human much more than it is important to show that you write nicely. So if it's writing under your own name on LinkedIn, for instance, or even just to boost your own business under your own name or the business of your employer, just do it. And if you have your own business and you really feel like you're gonna make a lot of mistakes, then maybe check in with a copywriter for like the difficult pieces. But with regards to grammar or spelling errors, I mean, there are so many digital tools out there today that can really help you steer away from those biggest mistakes. So you should really do so. Okay, let me scroll down. Yeah, again, I'm not against the use of ChatGPT at all. That would be really not fair to say, because I use it daily. So the way I would recommend using it is really to find structure, to get started. That's the main thing there. And also everyone has different weaknesses, different strengths. So just think about what are sort of my weaknesses and how can AI or ChatGPT help me there. I know what my weaknesses are. I'm not going to reveal them here, but I definitely use ChatGPT. I love the asking question. Okay, cool. Thank you, Jos. Is there a way to measure the impact of the way you write? Yes, actually, that's one of the things that's kind of like the advantage of today, right? Is that you can measure things because you're writing online. If you're like writing a landing page for your website, if you use Google Analytics, for instance, you can see like how well does it convert. You can see how many visitors you're getting. So that's one thing. You could do A/B testing, send different types of, or send an email or two versions of an email, and that would help you figure out, what's the best approach. So you can do a lot of testing. And the same goes for assessments. If you're a Pointerpro user, you can distribute different versions of an assessment first to see which gets the highest response rates, and then sort of iterate and make it better afterwards. I see a question. Yeah, okay. I see the question of Edison was answered, so thank you for that. And I think I have addressed everything. If I haven't, again, we'll get back to you. So thank you everyone for joining, and definitely join the webinar next week of Matt, because that's going to be a good one for sure. And thanks for following Pointerpro, and hope to talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye.